Chapter 3. The year 1970 was soon to conclude. I had just turned 20, and dreams of the Himalayas were luring me north. I did not know much about where I was going. I only knew that this part of the world was home to many great sages and holy people that I longed to meet and learn from. I was so excited to be in India on the precipice of a great discovery that I had little time to miss my family. They didn't know where to reach me, so I had had no letters from them since arriving. Still, before making the journey to the Himalayas, I wrote the following message to my home, so far away. My dear family, today I am leaving Delhi to go to the mountains to study. I do not know if I will be able to write often where I am going. Please do not worry if I do not write for a while. With God on my side, what can harm me? With love and thought, Richard. I secured free passage on a third-class train and headed to Rishikesh, a holy town in the Himalayas known for its many ashrams. As the steam engine chugged forward, leaving Delhi behind in a billowing trail of black smoke, I watched the sunrise from my window and prayed that my pilgrimage to the Himalayas would inaugurate a new day in my spiritual quest. Hours later, I arrived in Haridwar, a holy place on the bank of the Ganges, about 140 miles northwest of New Delhi. From there, I commenced the remaining 15 miles to Rishikesh on foot. By now, in my readings, I had devoured page after page about spiritual legends of the Himalayas. Being here was a dream come true. My first sight of the Himalayan foothills thrilled me beyond imagination. The foothills were covered with dense green forests. I saw each tree as a conduit emitting tranquility. A solitary pilgrim, I trekked along an earthen footpath, swooning with anticipation. From a distance, I caught sight of something that, like a spark, detonated an explosion of emotions. The river Ganges. I hurried forward and pressed my fingers into the cool, rushing blue waters. I shivered. After sitting for an hour in that lonely place, I walked along the riverbank and came upon the Divine Life Mission, which is the ashram of the renowned Himalayan saint Swami Chidananda. This was the ashram where he performed his meditation and established his teachings. This was the guru of Swami Chidananda, the regal Woodstock guru I had met in Delhi. Shivananda's prolific writings, humanitarian efforts, and personal example had attracted world fame. I had already read some of his writings and was delighted to come across this place. Entering, I learned from some of his followers that before Swami Shivananda left this world in 1963, he chose as his successor Swami Chidananda Saraswati from among his accomplished disciples. Swami Chidananda happened to be at the ashram when I arrived. For a couple of days, I simply soaked in the peaceful atmosphere of the ashram. I learned that ashrams so prevalent throughout India were supported by their guru's followers who maintained ties to the everyday world of business and commerce. After the fourth day there, I asked if I could meet Swami Chidananda. I was led into a simple room where I was greeted by the Swami, an extremely friendly, respectful, and humble man who invited me to sit on the floor with him. Swami Chidananda, I learned from his disciples, was born in South India in 1916 as the eldest son of a fabulously wealthy landowner. Around the age of 20, he heard a calling to live as a renounced monk, giving up all material comforts to serve God. It was at that time that he began to serve lepers, building huts for them on the vast lawns of his home and looking after them personally. In 1943, he finally left his home, moved into the ashram of Swami Chidananda in Rishikesh, where he was quickly recognized as a brilliant lecturer. Each morning I attended his lectures. He was a thin man with a shaved head and saffron robes, who was revered by both Himalayan ascetics and seekers from the West. Swamiji sat in a cross-legged yogic pose, speaking eloquent English with precise hand gestures. He said, "Life is meant for the realization of God. If you die without attaining God realization, your life is in vain. You have wasted away this precious gift of human birth given to you by God." He identified a common problem among spiritual practitioners, that one can do meditation in the morning and evening, but during the activities and dealings of the day show petty-mindedness and selfishness. This, the Swami explained confidently, undid whatever one accomplished in the hours of meditation. He placed great emphasis on the cultivation of virtue as a fundamental part of one's spiritual evolution. He compared this cultivation of virtue to the work of removing stones, pebbles, weeds, and brambles, therein making the soil fertile so that one can plant a garden. Throughout the day, he taught one must sacrifice for others. Morality and high ethics, he said, were like roots on the tree of yoga. He stressed that the disciple should have complete faith that in this age one could achieve God realization through mantra japa, the recitation of God's holy names. You should practice chanting the Lord's name, he said, until you reach a state in which the japa goes on uninterruptedly in the mind, even while you're sitting or standing, eating or drinking, walking or working, waking or sleeping. I didn't know how to chant the Lord's name, but I was very impressed by Chidananda's teachings. One evening, while he and I sat on the floor of his lantern-lit room overlooking the Ganges and the Himalayan valley, the Swami enthusiastically described the details of my travels with uncanny accuracy, and even voiced my most intimate thoughts. He told me how I had left home and discovered a burning passion to journey to India, risking my life along the way to get here. I had never told him these things, but he knew everything so perfectly. While he poured his blessings upon me, I sat in awe. It was rare to encounter someone with such power and fame who could remain so simple and kind. Longing to be in seclusion and purify myself, I thanked Swami Chidananda and left the ashram. The next morning, while sitting on the banks of the Ganges River, I composed a short letter to my mother. My beloved mother, I am doing just what I think I should be doing here. Rishikesh is a holy city on the banks of the Ganges River. I feel there is much to be learned in the peace and tranquility I have found here. It is quite difficult for me to tell you what I have been doing. I am not so much a tourist or a sightseer. I am more a seeker of my own soul. Living in the East is an entirely different way of life than living in America or Europe. Everything is completely different. It is very difficult to say when I will return, but I will say this. I deeply miss all of my family and all of my friends, and I long to see all of you. But you must understand that I must carry out what I set east to do, find the true meaning of life. Your loving son, Richard. Rishikesh, Himalayas, India, January 1971. I boarded a boat to cross to the eastern side of the Ganges. Large fish swarmed around the small vessel as we sailed across the sparkling aqua current. A cool breeze swept over me. With deep breaths, I drank it in, listening to the hypnotic chant of students reciting the Vedas or holy scriptures on the riverbank. Reaching the other side, I walked alone southward, along the bank of the Ganges in search of solitude. Finding a quiet place, I meditated, feeling myself millions of miles away from the world I knew. Hours later, I spotted someone approaching. Pacing slowly, his eyes fixed to the riverbank, was a holy man with a golden complexion, gray beard, hair draped down his shoulders, and robes that rippled in the mountain breeze. He radiated tranquility. I stood to receive him. Raising his soft, wide eyes, he spoke. You do not know who I am, but I know you. I have been observing your determination. Now offer the clothes you wear to the river Ganges, and today I will award you the cloth of a sadhu. What is a sadhu? I asked. A sadhu is a wandering mendicant who has forsaken worldly attachments to pursue a divine life. Or you may just say, a monk. On the bank of that holy river, he presented to me 2 pieces of unstitched white cloth made of thin cotton. He showed me how to wrap 1 piece around the lower part of my body to form a lungi, and 1 piece around the upper part to form a chadar. Then he gave me a loincloth of 2 strips of cotton called a kopan. Honored to receive this gift from such a kind soul, I placed my Western clothes into the river's sweeping current and offered a prayer. My turtleneck and jeans were gone forever. Before departing, the man whispered something in my ear. Given the letter I'd just written home, I found it uncanny. The Ganges will be your mother, he said. She will reveal this to you in time. A few days later, I came upon Vedniketan, a small, lonely 1-story ashram made up of about a dozen austere rooms. The residents, like many people I was meeting, were preparing to go to Kumbh Mela, the biggest religious festival in all of India. When I heard 20 million people were going to be there, I decided to stay behind. Not far behind Vedniketan, I found a cave in the forest where I made my residence. Each morning before sunrise, I walked to the bank of Mother Ganges and looked out into her swift current. She was perhaps 100 yards wide at this spot, her riverbank covered with soft silvery sand. Like jeweled ornaments of multicolors, smooth rocks ranging from tiny pebbles to boulders weighing thousands of pounds, lined her banks. Feeling unworthy of the treasures I sought, I felt a desperate need for purification. Then and there, I resolved that for 1 month I would sit in silence and prayer from sunrise to sunset. I prayed to have a spot revealed. Just then, before my eyes, I noticed a series of small rocks in the river. They formed a natural bridge to a much larger, somewhat flat rock about 20 feet from the bank. This rock was to become my cherished place. I would sit on it every day from sunrise to sunset, surrounded on all sides by the forceful current of the Ganges. In that incredible panorama, I felt so tiny. At dusk, as I returned to the cave, I passed an old man who sat on the ground selling miniature carrots displayed on a piece of old burlap. As I passed, he would offer me one. Ganges water and 1 carrot a day, I decided, would be my only food for 30 days. The solitude of that rock became my shelter. I sat from dawn to dusk, facing upstream. To my left, on the opposite bank, I could see in the distance an occasional yogi sitting in meditation. To my right stretched the beautiful Himalayan foothills. The closest mountain took the shape of a heart at its very top. I gazed on it for hours, thinking how it symbolized for me the heart of God. A heart that is unlimited, giving ultimate shelter to all beings. A heart that is majestic and beautiful. Just as in climbing a mountain, we leave behind the earth where we stand. To reach the heart of God, we have to leave behind unfavorable earthly attachments. Sincere spiritual practice is an uphill climb, and no matter how many difficulties we face, we have to continue looking upward with hope. The mountain provides all support for those who strive to reach its top. Similarly, if we are sincere, the Lord will provide us with the means to reach His supremely merciful heart. Spread out all around me on all sides was Mother Ganges in her winter dress of sparkling, undulating aqua. Her waves rippled and swirled as if intoxicated by her own beauty. No human artist could capture even a moment of this unending display. And just as her art was created, it simultaneously disappeared. I took from this a lesson. All beautiful forms of this world are in the process of transformation. Nothing is stable. With every moment, our reality is changing. Mother Ganges, like nature, is constant, but no manifestation of hers remains. Likewise, all that we hold dear in this world is imperceptibly vanishing. We cannot cling to anything. But if we can appreciate the beauty of the underlying current of truth, we can enjoy a reality deeper than the fickle waves of joy and sorrow. I sat, a submissive student, trying to learn from my teacher. She begins her course from high in the Himalayas and flows without cease to the sea. Innumerable obstacles, huge rocks, fallen trees, or even mountains block her way, but nothing will stop her journey to the sea. Gracefully she flows over, under, or around all obstructions. Mother Ganges teaches us that if we want to attain the sea of our aspiration, we must persevere in our goal and never be discouraged by the inevitable obstacles that come on our path. All impediments are like rocks in the rivers of life. We should flow around them and never give up. With the Lord's help, there is always a way. As I sat on that rock, I imagined that watching the flow of the river was like watching the passing of life. If one is inside the river, one is greatly affected by it. But if one sits on the bank, one can observe it with detachment. Mother Ganges teaches that if we learn to be detached from our ego and the flurry of the mind and senses and the world around us and observe life with a sober disposition, we gain wisdom. After the sunset each evening, I returned to my cave in the forest and contemplated the gifts of the day. One day I thought about how millions of years of history had been enacted on these banks. During the age of the Aryans, spirituality flourished. Alexander the Great came and went. The Mughals conquered North India, ruled for centuries, only to be vanquished by the British Empire, which was eventually driven away by Mahatma Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose, and the Indian freedom movement. Slavery and freedom, war and peace, political conquest and defeat, like the seasons, they had all come and gone. Through it all, timeless Mother Ganges patiently flowed toward the sea. Truth, too, was unchanging. Whatever may happen in this world, however dramatic, it could not disturb the flow of truth. Many objects, I observed, were swept along in the current. Among them, leaves, flowers, uprooted trees, a dead buffalo, and even human corpses. If an object remained in the river's flow, I reflected, it would eventually be carried to the sea. But in the course of time, most things would be diverted to the banks and their progress halted. The spiritual path and the spiritual teacher are like the current of Mother Ganges, and the students are like the objects carried along on the river. If the follower remains faithfully in the current of the holy teachings, he or she will be carried to the ocean of spiritual truth. But many temptations and diversions appear along the banks, promising comfort and happiness, tempting the follower to come out from the current that leads to one's heart's aspiration. Not all aspirants will remain faithful, but those who do can reach the ocean of enlightenment. I wondered, who will be my teachers? And can I remain faithful? Early one morning, just before sunrise, I looked downstream into the current that never slept. I considered her 1,000-mile journey. The sea was calling, and each drop of water patiently flowed in the current to her ultimate destination, so far away. Mother Ganges is teaching me that patience and steadfastness are required to follow my calling. I never really stopped to think why I had left behind the promises of the world to sit alone on a rock in the Ganges and endure a rigorous self-imposed fast. Why did I act in such extreme ways, like a person obsessed? At the time, I did not feel that these were my choices. I felt the mysterious hand of destiny leading me forward. One brisk winter day, while absorbed in meditation, sweet harmonica melodies began to play in my mind, drawing my attention away from anything else. My consciousness flowed irresistibly toward that imaginary music. Concert after concert was performed within the theater of my mind. A longing impelled me to reunite with my beloved harmonica, which I had not played since arriving in India. Every day, from before sunrise until after sunset, I remained faithfully on my cherished rock. But this day would be different. An urge pulled me away, and leaving behind the rock and river, I returned to my cave to play. As I lifted the harmonica to my lips, something strange came upon me. An invisible force induced me to return to the river. With each step, my impatient senses burned to play my instrument. Wading across Mother Ganges' stream, I crawled onto my rock. There, as on all other days, I sat on the cold, coarse surface. But today I held the harmonica, and my heart surged with a wave of affection that made my whole body shiver. How could a piece of metal and wood induce such an emotional state? This harmonica had been my dear friend, into whom I poured the intimate feelings of my heart. So confidential was our relationship that I whispered to its secrets that no one but God and I would ever know. It translated my inner joys, sorrows, and aspirations into sweet music. Over time, there had evolved between us the natural dialogue of the player and the played. In many ways, we were like lovers. As if jealous, my harp seemed to demand my full attention now. I wondered what it was I truly desired in my life. Gazing upstream into the distant mountains, a quiet sadness touched my heart. I understood that my trusted companion was now distracting me from my path. Standing on that rock, I peered into the deep blue waters of the Ganges. Then I gazed on my harmonica, knowing there was no other like it within 1,000 miles. Moved, I revealed my heart to my comrade, not in song this time, but in simple words. My dear friend, I thank you for being my faithful companion all these days. In times of pain and loneliness, you have always been there to give me solace and joy. How patiently you heard my innermost thoughts and transformed the words I was unable to speak into songs that touched people's hearts. I wept. Next, I turned my eyes to the holy river and prayed. Mother Ganges, in offering to you what I hold so dear, I wish to offer my unworthy heart to God. Please accept it. With both hands, I press the harmonica to my heart and then cast it into the Himalayan breeze. The instrument floated upward as if in slow motion and then descended. My heart shivered on hearing the plop as my dear companion disappeared forever in the current of the Ganges. Often the most precious gifts of life come in ways we neither plan nor expect. Some say it is due to chance, others cite karmic destiny, and yet others believe the Lord may intervene in our lives at any moment. One afternoon, as my awareness drifted away from my meditation toward the hymn of Mother Ganges' rushing current, her powerful, gentle waves seemed to be singing an anthem of wisdom and love. Held captive by that sweet song, I listened effortlessly. This became my meditation. From dusk to dawn, I simply meditated on the song of the river. Days later, while sitting in the crisp winter breeze, I gazed up at the Himalayan sky. Puffs of milky white clouds hovered from the limitless sapphire dome. Below me, the current swirled, rippled, and foamed. The sound of the river was a symphony that released me from the shackles of my thoughts. From the river's song emerged thousands of celestial voices, all chanting in unison the sacred syllable, Om. The sound captured my mind. Another evening, as the sun was setting, I observed golden winter clouds floating in the deepening blue sky. The mountains were cloaked in a gown of purple and appeared so alive I felt them to be breathing. Flocks of white cranes, black nightingales, green parrots, and birds of vibrant blues, reds, and oranges soared across the sky, each chirping, warbling, or trilling its own sweet song. Except for the bird song, that evening the Ganges Valley was still, with almost a mythical silence. My mind floated, recalling how God had taken from me so little and given me so much. For a moment, I contemplated that to the degree one feels unworthy of grace, one will be grateful when it comes. It is gratitude that makes the heart receptive to receive the Lord's blessings. Closing my eyes, I merged again in the endless chant of Om, the river song. It was just so beautiful. I felt on the verge of something extraordinary. Then I heard something that seemed to ascend from the depths of Mother Ganges' heart. A choir of thousands of celestial voices sang a slow, entrancing song that seemed to reverberate throughout the river valley. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hari Hari, Hari Rama, Hari Rama, Rama Rama, Hari Hari. Through the song of the river I felt God had whispered this beautiful mantra into my ears. It was a mystical rite of passage, carrying me on a wave that lifted me closer to my aspiration. My heart soared with gratitude. Inadvertently, I found myself breaking my long silence and singing these words aloud with the river. No intoxication on earth could come close to that experience. The meaning of the song was unknown to me, but it stole my heart. What did it mean? I believed that this mystery, like the mystery of the picture of the blue boy, would be revealed in time. In sacrificing the song of my harmonica, I had inherited the song of the Ganges.